we're going to take a look at this game between Fabiano Caruana with the white pieces and of course Anish Giri playing with the black pieces from Tata Steel today. All right, so game starts out knight f3 here. d5 is played by Anish, and now Fabiano plays b3, and this is a very surprising opening choice by Fabiano. Again, I don't know if his goal was to try and emulate the 5-time United States chess champion Hikaru Nakamura, but he chooses to play b3, and I think that was part one. He wanted to be like Hikaru, just like everybody says, I want to be like Mike. And then secondly, I think probably the idea was he wanted to just get out of theory. He wasn't sure where he could really crack Anish, and he decided to play something a little bit different. So at b3, bishop f5 played here, bishop to b2, e6 is played here, and now g3 played by Fabiano, h6. The idea being that if you do play a move like knight f6, white can play knight h4. However, I would caution that I think h6 is a little bit dubious, because after knight f6, knight h4, bishop e4, f3, bishop g6, anybody who's watched the stream of Hikaru Nakamura will notice there are many games which Hikaru has played against players like Wesley So, Wonderful Time, Minlay Tuan, and also against Alexander Bortnik, where he's gotten into a lot of trouble. So I think h6 is slightly imprecise as a move order objectively, because knight h4 is not yet a threat. So h6 is played, bishop g2, knight to f6, and now castles is played by Fabiano, bishop to e7, and here he plays d3. Now, those of you guys who have watched the Speed Chess Championship will notice that Hikaru Nakamura played knight e5 in his matches against Peter Savidler, Anish Giri, and also Ding Liren. At any rate, d3 is played, castles, knight bd2, again missing an opportunity to play knight e5 and open up the diagonal. Now a5 is played, a3, c6, and Fabiano plays rook e1 here. Idea behind rook e1 is that white wants to play for this e4 pawn break, but he doesn't really want to play knight e5 and trade off the knight. So the idea is to keep all the minor pieces on the board, but you still play for the central break with e4. Now we have bishop to h7 played here. Now e4 is played, knight b to d7, and now queen e2 is played here by Fabiano. Now again, queen to e2 looks pretty normal. White connects the rooks here on e1 and a1, maybe a rook d1, maybe you also have ideas like e5 or maybe even c4. So queen e2, queen b6 is played here, and now after queen to b6, Fabiano plays a4. Again, not really clear if this is the best move or not, but the idea behind a4 is mainly if you play a random move like h3, after a4, b4, black can play c5 here. And again, you cannot capture the bishop because your bishop on b2 hangs, and black probably is going to win material on the queen side. Maybe you can still go c3 and hold on, but again, with this pawn on c3, the bishop loses all of its scope, so it's a little bit questionable to play it like this. So after queen to b6 is played here, in this position, Fabiano plays a4, stops Anish's plan of pushing his pawn himself. So now we have rook f c8, and now we have rook a c1 played here. Bishop to c5 by Anish, again moves the bishop off this e7 square, and he tries to put pressure on this long diagonal from b6 towards the king on g1. Now we have e5 played here by Fabiano, knight to e8. Now we get knight f1. Again, very tough position to play for both sides. However, I would say that in general I prefer to be black here, primarily because the ideas like pawn to b5, like queen a6 b5 makes sense, while white really doesn't have ideas here in the center here. If you play for c4, there always are problems like bishop b4 followed by knight to c5, and your d3 pawn is weak. If you try to play d4 now after bishop f8, black has c5, but additionally you've also opened up this long diagonal from the bishop on h7 towards the pawn on c2. So knight f1 is played here by Fabiano. Anish goes queen to d8. As I said earlier, if you play d4, you open up this diagonal. Right now the bishop on h7, it's not a bad piece, but the pawns sort of prevent any real threats from h7. So after queen d8, we have knight to e3. Knight c7 is played here by Anish, king h1, and now b5. Very logical idea. Black wants to go knight b6 and try to put a lot of pressure on a4 here. Additionally, with the knight on c7, it also supports this pawn thrust with b5. Now we have knight to d4 here, and Anish takes on a4. Fabiano takes. If you were to take pawn on c6 here, after queen to e8, if you try to capture the pawn and argue a view of one extra pawn, the pawn on c2, black can now go knight to b6, attacking the knight on c6. After knight to d4, knight takes a4, bishop a1. Black can now play a move like knight to b5, or even potentially trading and following that up with knight b5. Black is quite a bit better here. So you can't really take on c6, so you have to play b takes a4. And now we get knight b6 by Anish. This sort of is a start, I would say, of where Anish kind of loses the thread just a touch. Knight to b6 is played. Now we have rook to a1 by Fabiano to guard the pawn on a4. And now we get knight to a6 here. Again, when you say the engine disagrees, we're looking at general themes. I might put in moves that are not the absolute best, but they highlight the ideas that you're looking for. So knight to a6 is played here. Fabiano goes knight b3, tries to put the knight on a supportive square where it hits the pawn on a5, but it also targets the bishop on c5 here. So after knight b3, bishop to e7 is played by Anish, and now we get f4. Black still remains a little bit better, although now you have to be careful of ideas like pawn to f5 since white has now connected the chain, and your queenside attack is not really super fast here. Now here Anish plays queen d7, and this is sort of the start of really losing the thread. It felt to me during the game that Anish already did not realize the potential danger looming with ideas like g4 and f5, bishop h3 and f5, or even rook f1 and f5, and queen d7 has really started being a little bit too cautious. Now Fabiano goes f5, a very good move by the way, because when you look at this position, you'll notice this bishop on b2 is not great. There's this pawn on e5 that's in the way. So f5 is a way of trying to attack, and now after e takes f5, queen f3, white has ideas like bishop to h3, attacking f5. Additionally, you have this bishop on h7 that is really bad now behind this pawn, and even later there are ideas like e6 to open up this other diagonal from b2 towards g7. So now we get knight to c5 played here by Anish. Fabiano trades and he goes d4 again. Diagonal is now closed, so d4 is a move that kind of tries to support the center. That being said, in retrospect, it was not the best move, primarily because it created this weakness here on c4, which we'll see proves to be very important later on. So what Fabiano should have done here was played bishop to h3, and now after bishop takes to e3, queen takes to e3, you'll notice that black has an extra pawn. He's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So black has an extra pawn here, but you're attacking the knight, and after black plays c5 and you go e6, pawn takes, queen takes, rook takes, now both the bishops have open diagonals. Your rook is attacking the knight on b6, and white is probably quite a bit better here in fact. So this is a big missed opportunity for Fabiano. As I've alluded to in several other games, sometimes it's really important that you pay attention to the piece placement and logical ideas for opening up diagonals or creating attacks instead of solely worrying about material. Because after you play this move d4, bishop e7, bishop h3, again, it looks like white's going to win the pawn back, but now your bishop is very passive behind the pawn wall from d4 and e5. So g6 is played by Anish, and now Fabiano goes g4 here, and now we get pawn to f4. Only move, by the way, if black takes on g4, after bishop takes g4, you're going to lose material here. And if you say play a move like, I don't know, queen c7, after g takes f5 here, the ideas of f6, attacking the rook, combined with like rook g1, your king is under major attack, and this bishop on h7 is really not very well placed. So instead, f4 is played by Anish. Fabiano correctly plays g5 here, and now Anish plays queen a7. In retrospect, this move is a mistake. Again, not going to be critical of Anish because it's very tough in this position. You're really left with a tricky situation where you have to decide where the pieces belong. Do you want to go queen d8, queen e8, queen a7 here? So after playing queen to a7, this game starts spinning. What would have been better is to go queen e8, keeping the queen very close to this king side here, because as we will see in the variations with bishop takes c8, f takes e3, white no longer has pawn to e6 because the queen guards the pawn on f7. So back to the game, after g5, queen a7 is played. Now we have bishop takes c8, which is a mistake, by the way. White is oddly enough much better here after knight to g4, because after bishop takes g5, white can go bishop to c1, attacking the pawn on f4. And for example, let's say black plays a move like h5. You can go knight to f6, bishop takes f6, e takes f6, and now the rook is under attack, so you go rook e8. And now after bishop takes f4, white is much better. And again, very hard to understand why on first glance, but when you start looking at more in depth after a move like knight c4, white goes c3, you will notice that in this position, black has this dead bishop on h7 behind this pawn wall. Thank you so much to Healthy Gamer GG for the raid with 2784. Thank you so much for the raid. Really appreciate all you guys who are coming from Healthy Gamer GG. Keep on gaming, but keep that mental very fresh. It is really important when all is said and done. All right, so back to the game. After g5, queen a7, we have bishop takes c8. Big mistake, as I said, knight g4 is the right move. Bishop takes c8, f takes e3, and now Fabiano plays e6. This is the best move. Those of you guys who are wondering, we are doing a game analysis from a game that was played today in the top level chess tournament in the Netherlands, in the small town of Wijk aan Zee. When is the stream with Hikaru? We'll see. All right, so we have e6 here, and now bishop g5 is played. Black does not take the bishop on c8 here, because after rook takes c8, queen takes f7, king to h8, white has pawn takes pawn, threatens checkmate on g7 here. Now after black plays rook to g8 to prevent the mate on g7, you play bishop to a3, targeting the bishop. Now black has to go knight c8, and then you have queen f4 here, again threatening another checkmate on e5 as well. Black simply cannot stop this checkmate threat, and the game would be over. All right, so we have bishop takes g5 played here by Anish. We have bishop to d7 is played, and now pawn takes pawn, bishop takes pawn, king to h8. And one thing you'll notice in this position is that when you count the material, we know that rooks are worth 5 and knights are worth 3. So white has a rook versus a knight. However, when we count the pawns, you see 1 2 3 4 5 6, 1 2 3 4. So black has a knight and 2 pawns for the rook, so 5 equals 5, as we know from math. 5 does not equal 3, 5 does not equal 4. Additionally, you'll notice that black has a great knight that comes to the c4 square where it protects the pawn and can also jump to d2 or even e4. So here we have bishop a3, knight to c4 is played, bishop to c5 played by Fabiano, and now queen g7, queen g4, bishop to f6. Idea that now you want to play g5, open up this diagonal, the bishop on h7, rook a b1 is played here, and now pawn to g5, opening up the long diagonal for this bishop that's been out of the game for its entirety. And now we have bishop f5, rook t8, and it's in this position that Fabiano, perhaps he has not played a lot of chess lately, perhaps it was just a matter of getting tired, mentally just struggling to stay focused and in the game, and now he plays the very strange move rook to b6 here. Now, as we know from the clip that we saw, Fabiano very simply, even though he's a top level chess player, he got tired and he forgot that black could play knight takes rook. Evidently Fabiano thought after rook b6 he was just going to capture the pawn on c6 and be doing much better, so he plays rook b6. And again, maybe this is karma. Those of you guys who are coming from the Dr. K stream, you know, there are these Indian concepts like karma where, you know, what goes around comes around. And we know that some months back there was a world championship match between Magnus Carlsen and Jan Nepomniachtchi, and in that match there was one situation where Nepomniachtchi just blundered a piece. He captured a pawn, allowed Magnus to push a pawn and trap his bishop, and he lost the game. And most of us were covering that game at the time, including Fabiano, and we were like, well, this is a move that even an 1800 should not miss. So maybe this is the world's way or karma's way of proving that everybody makes these mistakes no matter what your rating is. So after rook b6, Anish just simply snaps the rook. And now after you snap the rook on b6, white can take back, but you do the material count. You'll see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4. Black is up 2 pawns. So after bishop f5, queen takes f5 is played. It's worth noting at this point in time, already Fabiano probably could have resigned. Bishop takes d4, bishop takes a5, and now Anish goes bishop c3. Again, the material plays. As we know, if you're +2, you have 2 points of extra material, or you have two extra cheeseburgers. That is always a good thing. The bishop c3, you trade down queens, rooks, but 2 extra pawns for black here, and the position is very good. The queen takes c3, king g2 is played by Fabiano. Idea being that if you were to capture the extra material, the rook here, after queen f6 check, king h7, you have queen f7, king h8, queen f6, which is a drop. And if king g8, queen g6, king f8, queen f6, this is also a repetition of moves. So after king g2, Anish plays queen d2 check, king to f1, and now he goes king g7. Again, avoid any of the checks here on the light squares. And now after queen d7, king f6, you cannot take the rook, so queen f2 is checkmate here. The queen d6 is played, and now we have king f5, queen d7, rook to e6, queen h7, king g4, and after queen f7, rook e4, Fabiano resigns. The idea is just rook f4 check, attacking the king and the queen. You go queen d7, black just sidesteps on h4. Now the king is very safe, no checks, and I go rook f4, and you lose the game. So Fabiano unfortunately had to resign the game here, and with it, Anish moves back into the hunt. I believe he is on an even score. Fabiano moves to -1. He has now lost 10 points in the tournament, so it's looking very dire for him. But again, they've only played half of the tournament, so we have a long way to go from here.